Welcome back to Blacklit Memory. Tonight, I've got 10 stories from the coldest place memory can reach, the Alaskan wilds. Out here, breath hangs too long in the air, footprints form where no one's walked, and some echoes come back, remembering more than you said. But before we begin, hit subscribe, leave a like, and tell me where you're listening from, because one of these stories might have passed just a few miles from your door. Thank you for being here. Now then, let's begin. I used to think nothing could shake me after Kandahar. But when my son asked if we could race the Iditarod together, something in me flinched. Not because I was afraid of dying, but because I wasn't sure my son belonged to the world of survivors yet. Jack was a child of the cold, born in Nome, raised on venison, trail dust, and the howl of malamutes. He could tie a sled line before he could lace a boot, and like most boys raised by the wind, he thought pain was a suggestion. My name's Connor Beck, 42, retired military. I train sled dogs and keep mostly to myself along the Yukon. Jack is different, tougher in some ways, but with eyes that haven't learned what to fear yet. I thought I could teach him everything, except how to be afraid. We set out from Anchorage with 4 other teams. Snow thick, skies clear. The dogs pulled strong, steady, the lines humming low over the crusted white. We didn't talk much. We didn't have to. Our rhythm was the conversation. By the 3rd day, just past McGrath, I saw something that slowed me. 5 sled tracks, fresh, too fresh. They ran parallel to the 4 teams ahead of us. But we were the last team on the trail. I said nothing to Jack. Could have been a team circling back. Could have been, I miscounted. But that night, with camp set and the dogs curled in tight circles, I heard it. A bell. Not a wind chime. Not gear shifting. A collar bell. Old style. The kind I used to strap on lead dogs before the war. It rang once. Maybe twice. From somewhere behind us, where no other camp should be. If you've ever walked alone through snow-heavy woods, you know, the worst sound is a second set of footsteps, when no one's supposed to be walking beside you. The next day was white on white. No horizon, just endless pale. I couldn't stop thinking about that bell. That night, I got up halfway through my watch and wandered the edge of camp. I found a new sled track, sharp and straight, running alongside our camp. No boot prints, no paw marks, just the cut of runners gliding like something weightless had passed. Jack sat up as I came back, said he heard something scratching the tent. I told him it was just the wind. But when I checked the gear bags, I found an old dog collar, faded leather, bell attached, a thin smear of blood on the buckle. Our dogs were all accounted for. Another team ahead of us dropped out. Cold exposure, they said. One musher was disoriented. Jack didn't ask questions, but I saw him grip the sled rail tighter when we left the checkpoint. The light that day was gray and sharp as old bone. Near Shagaluk, the dogs started barking, wild and high. I jumped from my bedroll, grabbed the flashlight, and stumbled into the night. My breath fogged instantly. The air had that kind of silence that hurts. And then I saw it. A sled. Empty. No lines. No dogs. No driver. Just sliding slowly across the edge of the woods, cutting a long trail in the snow like someone had let go seconds earlier. I raised the light, following its path. Nothing. Just white. Deep. Clean. Too perfect. I turned back to camp. Jack was standing there, still, his face pale in the beam of the flashlight. He didn't say a word. He held out his hand. In his palm was the collar from our lead dog, the one that had never been taken off. But his eyes weren't looking at me. They were looking past me, into the dark. I didn't tell Jack what I'd seen. I didn't tell him that the sled I followed had no driver and no dogs, or that it cut a line through snow like a blade through silk. I didn't even tell him that I wasn't sure I'd made it back alone. Because there was a moment, just a second, when I looked into the dark behind me and felt like something had paused. Like it had waited for me to turn around first. We kept racing. The days blurred into white and the nights into blue. I kept feeling a presence behind us. Sometimes I stopped to listen, pretending to adjust the lines. But really I was waiting to hear the faint shush of sled runners or the soft, awful jingle of that damn bell. Another team dropped out. The official report said one of their mushers couldn't be accounted for. No one used the word missing. But I overheard something on the radio chatter. Someone said the worst part was no one remembered when that person joined them. Or even if they had. Checkpoint lights appeared on the horizon like stars fallen too low. Warmth. People. Soup in metal pots. The illusion of safety can feel stronger than safety itself. Jack slumped over the floor of the supply cabin, still in his coat, snoring like the kid he almost still was. I talked to a volunteer, an older man with frostbitten ears and coffee breath. I almost told him what I'd seen, that there might be something trailing us, that something might be joining the race without registering. I opened my mouth, but the bell for the next departure group clanged. He patted my arm and shuffled off to check gear. Later, as I checked our rig one last time, that same man passed by and asked, "Your team's 4 or 5? I told him 4 and turned back. He didn't reply, just kept walking. But I swear I saw him look behind me, not at me. At dawn, everything changed. I woke up to panic in the air, not sound, a kind of stillness that screamed. The dogs were howling, scraping their paws raw against the packed snow. Jack was gone. My boots hit the ground before my heart caught up. I raced outside, into the brittle cold. And there, just at the tree line, I saw it. A 5th sled, sliding away silently. No dogs pulling it, just gliding, as if the snow carried it like water. And on it stood Jack. He is still, perfectly upright. His arms hang loose at his sides. His body sways gently with the motion of the sled, but his head doesn't turn, until it does. His face tilts back toward me. His eyes do not see me. I don't think. I just run. I leap onto our sled, scream at the dogs, and we charge into the woods, cutting the trail like knives. The trees close around us, but I keep my eyes on the figure ahead. The 5th sled drifts like it's never known friction. I gain inches, then feet. The moment comes. I lunge. My body collides with his. We fall, tumble, crash into snow that swallows us whole. My ears ring. My breath stings. Jack coughs, spits, blinks. He looks at me. Really looks. I hold him by both shoulders, kneeling in the snow, part, trying to climb out of my chest. The 5th sled glides on. Not fast, not slow, just away, into the tree line. No driver, no dogs, no sound. It disappears like breath in the wind. We withdrew from the race that day. No explanation. We packed up, drove south, and didn't stop until we saw pavement again. Jack didn't say much. Neither did I. Months later, I was splitting firewood behind the house. There was no snow. The air smelled like moss and damp wood. And then I heard it. A soft jingle. I turned. Nothing. No dogs. No sled. Just something on the front step. A collar. Old leather. A clean, polished bell. No blood. No rust. I never brought that thing home. I left it in the woods, but somehow, it found us again. And the worst part, I am not sure I pulled my son off that sled, or just pushed the copy down first. I've been driving the Dalton for 11 winters, Anchorage to Prudhoe Bay and back, hauling frozen freight through a place that doesn't want you alive. Out there, everything's bigger than you. The sky, the snowbanks, the silence, But it's not the cold that gets you. It's what rides with it. My name's Wes Harper, 33, never married, still got all 10 fingers, and just enough good sense to trust the rules we made. There were 3 of us that trip. Me up front, Ronnie in the middle rig, and Pete in the last. We ran convoy style, always in range on shortwave, never out of sight for more than a few miles. The rules weren't written down, but we lived by them. Don't stop at night, don't pick up anyone, and for God's sake, don't split up. We were 2 days in when I saw the figure. Just past mile 297. No other lights, no other rigs for hours. Snow gusted across the shoulder like ghosts dragging their sheets. And there he was, a man, or what looked like one, standing perfectly still at the edge of the road. I slowed a little. Couldn't help it. He was upright, arms at his sides, facing the woods, not thumbing a ride, not waving, just standing there, like the cold didn't touch him. I radioed Ronnie, asked if he saw anything a few clicks back. He clicked back a second later. Yeah, he said. Guy just standing there, not moving. Yeah. Then nose of the backen for my Danik to R5. That is nose of the backen. 5 minutes apart. Different trucks. Same spot. Same guy. I should have told Pete. I should have said exactly what I saw. Exactly where. But I didn't. I just said nothing weird. Because deep down I thought if I said it out loud, it would know I saw it. The next day, Pete peeled off for a while to fix a busted taillight. Said he'd catch up before sundown. No one argued. We all knew the road well enough to relink fast. When he came back on the line, something felt off. Back on, he said. You good? Ronnie asked. Yeah. I'm good. All good. It's fine. When Chaston, Ronnie cracked a joke about ghosts messing with Pete's wiring. Pete chuckled. Just once. Then nothing. That night, I checked my rear cam mid-run. Just a habit. But I froze. Between my truck and Ronnie's, something moved. A shape walking. Slow. Steady. But when I stopped to let them catch up, there was no one on the road. No footsteps. Just untouched snow. I told myself it was drift shadow. Told myself a lot of things. But none of them stuck. By the time we were nearing the gas station checkpoint outside Dead Horse, Ronnie came back on. Hey, he said. Pete's truck just kept going. Blew right past the pull-off. And to herself, Roddy Wantain, the laving and faces. I called Pete. There was a long crackle. Then, I am still here. There was no the axed. We pulled in. Both of us. Cold steam from the exhaust curling like question marks in the air. Pete's rig was already parked. Locked. Lights off. Then we saw him. Standing beside his cab. Just standing there. He didn't remember parking. Didn't remember passing us. Said he blinked and was suddenly here. I walked over. Said nothing at first. Just looked. Same jacket. Same pants. But no grease on the sleeves. He'd gotten that on him earlier. Elbow deep in his rig. There was no sign of it now. And his coat zipper. It was done up the wrong way. Pete always zipped from the bottom up. Always. I didn't say anything right away. Not to Ronnie. Not to Pete. But that night I kept watching Pete out of the corner of my eye, as if he might blink wrong or stand too still again. There was something in his silence that felt copied. He kept repeating himself. Little things. It's fine. Ice is thinning. Nothing to worry about. He said those same lines 3 or 4 times in the span of an hour. Ronnie joked that Pete sounded like a voice recorder stuck on play. We agreed to shut down for the night. Parked close. 3 trucks lined up, windows facing out toward the snowfield. First time in weeks we'd all stopped together in the same place. Pete didn't eat, didn't lie down, just stood near his window. hands at his sides. At some point, I pretended to sleep but kept my eyes half open. He didn't move, didn't shift weight, didn't scratch, just stared out into the dark, like he was waiting for something to walk back into view. Then morning came, and everything flipped again. Pete was back to his old self, laughing, making strong coffee and stronger jokes. He even messed with Ronnie's air pressure gauge like he used to back in Anchorage. For a minute, I almost let go of it all. Ronnie laughed too, slapped Pete on the back and said he needed to stop being creepy. They were both ready to finish the run. One last push, and we'd be back in comms range, out of the dead zone. But before I climbed into my cab, I saw something. Right behind my rear wheel. A single boot print, smaller than Pete's, too small for mine, and wet, like someone had stepped there just seconds earlier, but the snow was dry all around. That final stretch of road was a straight line into fog, white layers stacking into each other until the world felt folded, the kind of light that makes your mirrors lie to you. Then Ronnie's voice crackled on the radio. "Hey, Wes, is someone in your cab?" It's Hassaner, a Padian. I glanced in the mirror. My blood chilled. Pete was in my passenger seat, just sitting there, not looking at me, not blinking. I hit the brakes so hard the rig groaned, threw the door open and lunged back. The cabin was empty. No Pete, no sound, just the slow tick of cooling plastic. But in the seat pocket, tucked half out, was an ID card. Pete's. Same photo, same name. But the eyes, the pupils were gone. Just blank whites, like someone had copied the image and missed the last step. I looked up, out into the fog, and far down the highway, barely more than a shape, the same silent walker was moving away from me, wearing Pete's coat, same zipper, same stride, just walking, as if nothing had ever happened, as if something had finally found the right fit. They said Pete went missing in his sleep, that he must have wandered off, disoriented, maybe hypothermic. That kind of thing happens out here. I switched routes, started taking southern contracts. No more north runs, no more Dalton. And now, every time I drive past midnight, I check my back seat 3 times. Not because I'm scared of thieves, but because if I ever see Pete again back there, I need to hit the brakes before he finishes sitting down. Before we step into the next story, if you're still here, still listening, with the lights low, maybe drop a comment. Just tell me where you're listening from. It helps more than you know. All right, let's keep going. I signed up for the winter rotation at the Takotna Research Station because I thought I could handle the quiet. 4 months alone in a cabin. Just me, the snow, and the cold. I told myself it would be peaceful. Time to write, read, run data on permafrost drift. No big deal. My name is Naomi Bell. I'm 28, a biothermal systems engineer with a focus on environmental data collection. I'm used to ice cores, irregular solar patterns, and the occasional power outage. I've never been good with silence, though, and I guess that was the real test. The cabin sits by the lake, small, dry, insulated. I kept a radio charged for weekly check-ins and logged my samples like clockwork. There was a cat too, Dusty. Some researcher before me left her behind. She hated the wind but loved sitting by the window. Before I left town, an older woman at the trading post warned me with a crooked grin. Said, "Don't stare too long at the windows if it's -30. If they fog up before you breathe, you're not the one standing there." I laughed. Figured it was a local thing. Something to spook the newcomers. The first couple of nights were fine. Boring. Even. I shoveled snow, took core readings, boiled rice, made notes. Dusty curled near the heater and watched every move I made like I was being graded. But on the second night, something changed. It was just past 11. The temperature had dropped below -28. I had finished writing and was brushing my teeth when I noticed the window fog. Two rounded patches of condensation, level with my head, but I hadn't breathed on the glass. I wiped them away, told myself it was some trick of airflow, maybe moisture from the kettle, maybe even dusty. But 5 minutes later, they came back. Same shape, same position, still too high for the cat. I grabbed the thermal meter and aimed it at the window. The readout was normal. Cold. No heat leak. No pressure shift. No reason for breath marks. I used to believe science could measure everything. That was before the cold started breathing back. By the third night, there were more patches. 3 this time. Then 4. All fogged neatly on the inside of the glass. Not smeared like fingerprints. Not melting like frost. Just watching. Dusty stopped sleeping near the window. She hissed once, then hid in the supply box and refused to come out. Her ears flat, eyes locked on the door, as if something waited outside that only she could hear breathing. I started journaling more. It helped, made the cold feel like data. But every morning, the last line I wrote before sleep appeared changed. Not crossed out, rewritten. Same pen, same page. The words said, "Do not turn your back." I tried not to remember what the locals had told me, but one line kept circling in my head. Not the joke, the other one. From 1986, a researcher went missing that year during a solo winter rotation. No one ever found him. His journal's final entry read, "Something is breathing with me. I cannot see its face." On the 6th night, I was writing by the lantern, dusty, curled tight by the stove, and I heard it. A sigh, long and low, right behind me. I turned fast. No one, but the window in front of me fogged instantly. Not from my breath, not from Dusty's. One new patch. Dead center. I wiped it, hands shaking, and staring back at me was my reflection. Except the eyes were blank, and the mouth was open. Breathing. I did not sleep that night. I sat on the edge of the cot with the lantern burning low and Dusty pressed against my leg. Every sound felt wrong. The wood creaked too slowly. The wind seemed to pause just long enough to listen. I tried to tell myself it was exhaustion. That isolation made people see things move in still air. By dawn, the windows had cleared, but I still felt watched. The thermometer outside read -31. My breath came out in small clouds that looked too heavy, like they wanted to fall instead of fade. I made coffee, packed a radio battery, and tried to call in an emergency. The signal cracked and died. Power lines were frozen solid. That was when I decided to leave. I planned to cross the lake at sunrise, 7 kilometers to the relay station. I checked the generator one last time. It sputtered but never started. The battery coils had frozen, a solid block of ice. I knew I would have to walk. That night, I locked every door, piled snow against the main entrance, and sealed the window seams with duct tape. Dusty hid inside my parka, trembling like she could sense something waiting outside. I left all the lights on. The cabin glowed in the dark like a single lung still breathing. When morning came, it was too quiet. No snow falling. No wind. I opened the door and froze. There were footprints in the snow. Human ones. Coming from the tree line straight to my door. No tracks leading away. I wanted to believe they were mine, but the stride was longer. Wider. I never stepped like that. By noon, I reached the relay station. The ice across the lake was solid, but the sound beneath it felt alive. Groaning, sighing, exhaling. Inside the station, it was warmer. The sunlight through the frost looked almost golden. I sat by the radio, sent an SOS, and waited. For the first time in days, I thought I might be safe. I found a drawer full of old papers, weather logs, and a few empty thermos bottles. Then I found a notebook. The cover was brittle with ice. The name on it was James Alcott, the missing caretaker from 1986. I flipped to the last page. The writing slanted down as if the pen had been pulled from his hand. It said, "The breath stays, even after we are gone. As you." That night, I stayed at the relay. It should have been calm. It should have been warm. But as soon as the sun slipped under the trees, I saw it again. The glass on the window began to fog. Not from me. Not from the cat. It fogged from the inside out. I held my breath. The marks kept growing. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All at head height. The air turned sharp, like needles pressing into my lungs. Then came the sound, the scraping, gentle at first, then frantic. From both sides of the room, I turned toward the window. 5 fogged circles pulsed softly, each one behind where my reflection should have been. I grabbed the nearest mug, swung it, and the glass shattered. The wind roared through, cutting straight across my skin. The cold filled my chest. I felt it pull, like it wanted something. I exhaled, and it took the air from me. In that instant, there were 6 breaths on the glass. Mine, and something else. Then the cold swallowed everything. They found the relay 2 days later. The lights were still on. No one inside. The cat was alive, hidden in a toolbox, breathing softly. On the broken glass, 5 perfect circles had refrozen, shaped like breath marks. The 6th had melted away. Dusty's breath misted the air as they carried her out. For a moment, it looked like a human face hovered in the fog. I had climbed a dozen peaks before Denali. Andes, Dolomites, Rockies. But there was something different about this one. The air pressed differently. Not thinner, heavier, like the sky had to remember your weight before it let you pass. My name is Brian Ellis. I'm 36, a field photographer for National Terrain. They sent me to cover a small civilian expedition attempting a winter ascent of Denali. Nothing too ambitious, at least on paper. But from the moment we landed at base camp, I felt unwelcome. I brought my husky, Leo, for the trip. He had trained with me through ice, sleet, and rock, never once hesitated to follow my lead. This time, though, his ears stayed flat from the moment we crossed the first ice shelf. He growled at shadows. He slept close to the heater but never near the entrance. One of the local guides, an older man from the Dana, met us at the edge of camp. He looked at me longer than he looked at the others. Then he said, almost too soft to hear, "If the mountain does not call your name, do not try to climb. When you come back down, it will be the one that remembers who you were." We mentioned Dave. I laughed it off at the time. Wrote it in my notes under folklore. But on our second day at elevation, something started to unravel. Leo refused to walk past the 3,000 meter mark. He snarled at nothing, turned in tight circles, then braced his paws as if some invisible line had been drawn through the snow. I tried to calm him, but his eyes tracked something over my shoulder that I could not see. That night, I reviewed footage from the climb. I had taken a wide shot of the group moving across a ridge. 7 climbers, spaced out neatly. But in the middle, between 2 of them, stood an 8th figure. No one in our party remembered a person standing there. I watched the clip 3 times. The figure never moved, just stood there, half turned, as if listening to something below the wind. I deleted it, because I knew what I had seen. I just did not want to believe it had been there longer than I had. A few days later, I split from the team to get a westward angle of the ridge. Standard procedure. The light was better, and I wanted a solo shot of the ice shelf before sundown. Leo came with me, reluctantly. We were about 20 minutes out when Leo bolted. No bark, just a sudden jerk of the leash, and he was gone, bounding into the fog. I shouted and followed, camera swinging against my chest. There were no paw prints, only my own, and beside them, a second set of human tracks. Same depth, same stride, identical to mine. I stopped, looked around. No one, no wind, only silence that felt too awake. That night, I made camp alone. I built a fire, ate from a heat pack pouch. When I zipped into the tent, Leo had still not returned. Around 2 a.m., I woke needing to pee. I stepped outside into the snow and took a breath that tasted like old paper. When I turned back to the tent, I stopped cold. I was still inside, lying in the sleeping bag, face turned slightly, breathing slow, not moving, just sleeping. The copy did not respond. It did not blink. But it was me. Same jacket, same split in the glove, same scab on the right cheek. I did not scream. I ran, through snow that bent around my knees, through cold that bit harder than the air should have. Back toward camp, blind in the dark, heart pounding like a fist against ice. Somewhere behind me, Leo returned. He limped beside me with a scratch behind his ear that was not there before. We made it to the main camp just before dawn. I said nothing, not to the climbers, not to the radio crew. I just waited. And the next morning, they found a body, frozen solid, 500 meters off the marked trail, wearing my coat, my gloves, my camera pack. The DNA match was confirmed hours later, and I was standing there, taking pictures of myself. I should have broken down right there, should have shouted that the dead man was me, that the jacket on that body still had my name stitched inside. But I kept the camera steady. I told them the body looked like someone from another team. I even helped zip the bag. Leo did not bark. He stayed behind me, with his ears pinned back and his breath short. I said we should descend separately, take a side route. No one argued. The mountain felt heavier than before. That night, in a rescue cabin halfway down, I caught my reflection in the tin mirror. Only it did not quite look back. My jawline blurred at the edges. My eyes seemed to hesitate in place. For a moment, I felt like I was remembering my own face instead of seeing it, like the mirror was trying to redraw me from memory. Leo slept on the far side of the cabin, refused to lie near me. He whined once during the night, low and thin, like a sound stuck between fear and grief. I whispered his name. He did not respond. When we reached Anchorage, I turned in the memory cards. My editor glanced through the photos and nodded, then paused. "These are strong," she said, "but you shot yourself a lot." In ready Tikka's laugh. I didn't understand. Then she showed me. Every group shot, every campfire moment, every trail snapshot. I was there. In each one, not in front, smiling. In the back, standing still, watching. But I took those photos. I was behind the lens, wasn't I? I went home and locked the door. I didn't answer the phone. I didn't answer emails. That night, I heard the door click open. I ran to the hallway. Leo was gone. The leash hung loose by the coat rack. I threw on my boots and stepped outside. The snow was soft. The tracks led toward the river's edge. And standing near the water, back turned, was the shape of a man. Leo walked calmly beside him. I shouted. No answer. I ran. He turns. His face is mine. But wrong. No mouth. No eyes. Just a pale outline shaped like memory. I shout again. Louder. Leo? And actions. He turns his head. Pauses. The copy does not move. I leap forward. Grab the leash. Pull hard. Leo stumbles toward me. The copy stands still, and I yell it loud enough for the cold to hear. I am Brian Ellis. You are not. Days body ends. The figure bursts like drifted snow caught in wind. One breath. One silence. Then nothing. I never went back to the mountains. I turned down every assignment. Leo stayed, but something in him never came back. He never howled again. He did not answer when called. Some nights I go through the photos. Most look normal now. But in the last one, the one I do not remember taking, I see Leo sitting on the ice. And behind him, someone stands, holding the camera. I had spent the last 2 years chasing stillness, not metaphorically. I meant it literally. Wide, unbroken landscapes where nothing moved and the air held its breath. I called it the Silent White series. Clean snow, flat water, no birds, just silence. My name is Reed Collins. I was 30 years old, a freelance landscape photographer. I moved from cabin to cabin across the north, chasing winter like some people chase storm fronts. My only constant companion was Toby, a squat black mutt with short legs and sharp ears. He had better instincts than I ever would. In early March, I hiked to a place called Kuskalana Lake. Locals from the nearby village called it the Mute Mirror. No cabins nearby. No roads. Just open ice and snow and sky. It was perfect. When I asked one of the elders about it, just to be polite, he only said one thing. Do not shoot the lake when the wind is dead. That water does not forget. It only responds, slowly. I'm Zoxus. I set up camp 20 meters from the shore. Snow crisp beneath the tent. No animal prints. It was just me, Toby, and a blank white sky. The first morning was clear. Light slanted across the lake like a blade. I set up my tripod, took a series of long exposures. The first photo looked good, clean, balanced. The water still enough to mirror the low sun. But when I stepped 3 paces to the left and took another frame, something felt wrong. The reflection had not moved. In the second photo, I was standing to the left, but my reflection remained where I had been, centered, upright, still holding the camera. But something was off. The reflection's hands were empty. I zoomed in. My real self held the camera to my face. The reflection did not. The surface was too smooth for motion blur. There were no ripples. No wind. It just lagged. Suppose you were standing at the edge of a lake, camera in hand, and the wind held its breath. Then you turned away, and the version of you on the water stayed there, just a second too long. Toby barked that night for the first time since we arrived, low and sharp, aimed at the lake. I stepped outside with a light. No movement, but I heard something, the faint crunch of snow, like someone walking barefoot through powder. I brushed it off. Could have been a branch cracking, could have been ice settling, but the next set of prints were not Toby's. I reviewed the photos in the tent, using my backup battery. The lake shots had changed. Each reflection was weaker, less defined, and something else. Behind the reflection, in frame, a second figure had begun to emerge. It looked like me. Same build, same stance, but it lacked detail, as if being drawn by a hand that had never seen a real person. The next morning, I washed my face with water from the lake, and when I looked down, my reflection did not wash with me. It only watched, eyes fixed on mine, mouth slightly open, not breathing. I stepped back. The water rippled. The reflection stayed still. That evening, I ran an experiment. I wore my cold weather mask, covered everything but my eyes, took another shot of the lake. The reflection in the image, no mask, just a pale face, blank and waiting. That night, I set a timer shot from across the camp. I needed to know. In the morning, I checked the photo. There I was, sleeping, and behind me, barely clear through the grain of the low light, Another figure stood at the edge of the lake, head tilted, arms at its sides. Not blurry, just wrong. I decided to leave the next morning, packed the tent, sealed the gear, loaded Toby's harness. But the moment I clipped his lead, he pulled back. He faced the lake and whined, low in his throat, like he did not recognize me anymore. I called his name. He stared at me, eyes wide and still. Then he looked back toward the water, confused. I had to drag him away from the shore. Back at camp, I checked the stainless steel bottle I used for boiling water. The reflection on its curve was warped. Yes, but something else was off. My reflection was turned slightly, the wrong way, back facing me. I pulled out the camera and started recording. Constant feed. I needed proof that I still matched the image, that my movements were mine, that my voice sounded like it always had. Hours passed. We made it to the edge of the forest just before dusk. The trees felt safer. The light bounced differently. The camera showed my face the way I remembered it. No delay. No error. I tried calling an old friend on my satellite line. Left a voice message. I played it back. The tone was steady. My name clear. My laugh real. That night I slept in a hunter's cabin 3 kilometers from the lake. Wood stove. Dry floor. The kind of place people forget until winter brings it back. I started to believe I was fine, that the mountain air had messed with my eyes, that Toby was just shaken, that I had scared myself into a corner I could walk out of. Then sometime around 2 in the morning, Toby barked. Once, sharp, direct. I sat up fast. The cabin window was fogged from inside. I grabbed the flashlight, moved toward the glass. Outside, something stood beneath the porch light. It looked like me. Identical coat, identical stance, but the head tilted too far to one side, and the eyes were just a little off. One stared above me, the other below. The mouth was open, smiling on one side. I backed away, did not open the door. My hands shook. Toby pressed against my leg, growling low. Then I noticed something else. The window should have shown 2 people. Me inside, it outside. But it only reflected me. There was no reflection of the figure at all. I reached for my photos, burned the prints, erased the memory cards. Then I shouted my name into the room, spoke it over and over. I dug into my mind for the first moment. I held a camera. The first mountain I climbed. The first time I saw Toby run through snow. My name is Reed Collins, and I am not what that thing remembers. Outside, the wind picked up. The reflection vanished. And when I looked again, the porch was empty. I never finished the Silent White series. Now I photograph people. Only people. No mirrors. No glass. No lakes. Toby stayed with me. But whenever we pass still water, he growls. He never drinks. He watches it like it might breathe. I kept one photo. Half burned, half whole. On one side, my reflection fades into snow. On the other, there is only empty ice. That one hit a little different. If these stories mean something to you, leave a like, subscribe, or share this video with someone who'd stay up to hear it too. And if you've got a true horror story of your own, my email's in the description. Now, story 6. I had always worked better alone. Quiet mountains, long hikes, cold air and clean maps. That was my world. My name is Laura Marin, 31, regional surveyor for the Southern Brooks Range, specializing in avalanche mapping and snowpack shifts, the kind of work no one ever talks about. But everyone depends on when the mountain starts to breathe too heavy. This winter, they sent me to check a structure called Cabin 9 on Echo Ridge. It had not been used since 1989. My job was to assess its structural integrity for emergency use. Just 2 weeks. Snowed in. log notes, and report back. Locals called it Echo Ridge, but not because of the terrain. I asked a store clerk about the name. She looked at me and said, "That place used to repeat things nobody ever said. In the word jops." I thought it was a joke, or one of those things people say to mess with outsiders. Either way, I packed extra batteries and a backup radio, just in case. The cabin sat alone in a shallow snow basin, its windows iced over, but the frame was intact. It creaked when I walked inside, but it felt solid. Dust hung in the air like it had been waiting. The first day passed without much to note. I mapped the perimeter, tested the insulation, cataloged what was still usable. Bunk, stove, wall hooks, a half-rusted hand-crank radio. It worked. That was enough. On the second night, I did something I had always done since I was a student. I tested the echo. Just a habit. Helps map acoustics. Sometimes reveals voids behind walls. So I stood in the center of the cabin and said, "Hello, Danger Y." Silence. Then, after 4 full seconds, a voice came back. Not a bounce. Not a true echo. It sounded like someone repeating what I said from memory. Not sharp. Not exact. A shade behind the syllables. I tried again. "What's the weather today? Would I do annulment?" This time the answer came slower. "I was colder yesterday." I froze. That was not what I said. Maybe a distortion. Old wood and warped pitch. I grabbed my notebook and marked it for acoustic anomaly. But I will admit this. I was not afraid because it got it wrong. I was afraid because it sounded like it was trying to get better. Each night, I tested it. Each night, the reply came faster and more certain. By the 5th morning, the radio turned on by itself at 6:13 a.m. No static, just my voice from the day before. The exact tone, the right inflection. Except, the words were wrong. Last night, I had said quietly into my recorder, "I miss my mother. Thanks for watching." That morning, the radio repeated, "I hate my mother." The noted niced, same voice, same pitch. My voice, just twisted slightly. I unplugged it, pulled the battery. It clicked again at noon. This time it whispered, not broadcast. Toby, the service dog I was assigned for the trip, refused to go back inside after that. He stood by the shed, ears flat, tail tucked. Every time I tried to call him in, he looked at the cabin like it was breathing. That night I slept outside. But even with the radio dead, even with no power, I still heard it. In my headset, in my ears. Not an echo. A voice that sounded like mine, just slower. Learning. I stayed awake the entire next night, stared at the walls. No journal, no talking, no sound. Near morning I stood in the dark and whispered one line, "You will not take me. They do I self." 10 seconds later, the walls answered. "I already have." 1. The radio clicked on. Footsteps echoed inside it. Then the sound of me crying. But I had not cried. Not yet. I smashed the radio first, tore the wires out and threw it into the snow. The silence after was too sharp, too exact, like something was holding its breath. I packed my notes, strapped on my skis, and left before the next dawn. The ridge was slow to release me. Snow up to the knees. Sky, the color of wet paper. I followed the trail markers until the trees blurred into fog. Toby ran ahead, but kept stopping to look back. Waiting, whining softly. I thought he was tired. Later I realized he was checking which version of me was following. By mid-morning, I was 5 kilometers down the pass. I turned on my GPS to confirm direction. The screen glowed faintly blue. Then my voice came through the speaker. "Turn right," it said. "You took the wrong path." That she sighed. I froze. I had not recorded anything. I shut it off, yanked the battery. When I looked up, I caught my reflection in the black glass of the screen. My mouth was moving. I was not speaking. I ran until the snow burned my lungs. Found an old hunting shack near a frozen creek. It had no power, no radio, no signal. That was good. That was all I wanted. No more voices. Just wood, ice, and my own breathing. I started writing again. Longhand. Simple notes about temperature and weather. Trying to feel normal. But each morning, the pages changed. My handwriting was still mine, but the words had shifted. One night I wrote, "I do not believe the cabin still holds anyone. They're not nightin' in a sazing, and there, it's a mill." By sunrise it read, "I am the cabin now. Is happen. No or facted, no dation." I stared at that line until my hands shook. The ink had not bled. It had been written clean, smooth, like I had done it in my sleep. Toby growled at the notebook and backed away. That evening, I found an old tape recorder on a shelf. No batteries, no tape inside. Still, when I picked it up, it clicked on and played my voice. A conversation that had never happened. Me laughing. Me arguing. Me saying, "You should have stayed." End press. I threw it against the wall. The cabin shook. The light flickered once from my lantern, though the flame had not moved. My reflection in the window leaned forward even though I had stepped back. Something sat at the table across from me. Same hair. Same eyes. My hands. Her hands. Writing in my notebook, with slow, careful strokes. I shouted, "I am me. Rem." She looked up, mouth curved in a quiet smile. Then she spoke in perfect rhythm with my voice. "I know, and I will remember that when you are gone." It is that. I was found 6 days later near the base of the ridge. They said I was walking in circles, repeating coordinates that did not exist. I told them to burn the cabin. They did. Months passed. I no longer record my voice. But sometimes, when the power flickers in my apartment, I hear a faint click, and then a whisper, softer than my breath. It says my name, like it is practicing. Mark and I used to call it technical backpacking. Most couples planned trips to beaches or vineyards. We hauled antennas and signal analyzers into dead air zones and hunted Cold War leftovers. It was our version of romance. My name is Ellie Ramsey, 34, former telecom engineer, now a freelance tech archivist. Mark and I quit our jobs 3 years ago and started documenting abandoned signal stations. The forgotten ones. The kind you only find if you know what not to look for. That winter, we went north, deep into the Brooks Range. Our target was Station 7, K Omega, an old submarine relay built in 1973. It had not sent an official signal since 1982. Locals called it the silent responder. They said, that place stopped broadcasting, but it never stopped answering. Daffer is ein. We thought it was folklore. We were wrong. The first night, I set up my laptop and patched into the collapsed antenna loop. Mark helped rig a power line from our sled battery. Snow hissed lightly against the tarp while the laptop hummed. Then we got it. A faint Morse pulse. K. 07. I smiled. Mark leaned over and laughed. Said it was just static bouncing off the mountains. But I hit record anyway. Later, when I played back the signal, the pattern changed. More letters. A name. A. L. L. I. E. Then a pause. M. A. R. K. Neither of us had transmitted anything. Suppose someone ever calls your name over a radio. In Morse. Through static. Or buried in a scrambled frequency. And you never told them who you were. Turn it off. Because whatever is calling does not need to learn your name. It needs to remind you. For later. We stayed. Of course we did. The next day we explored the station itself. A squat concrete structure dug into the slope. Snow drifted and half buried. The inside smelled like dust and rusted battery acid. But the main equipment still had life. Dials twitched. One receiver flicked on at exactly 1:11 a.m. It sent another message. "Hello Ellie, stop, you came back, stop." Mark froze when he heard it. Said nothing. I opened my laptop to review the earlier recordings and realized they had changed. Clips I knew by heart had been replaced. I heard Mark's voice, but not his words. He was saying things he never said. Half of them sounded like conversations with me, ones I never remembered having. That evening, he said something even stranger. He stood near the old transmitter door and said, "We were here before. 2 years ago. Remember?" In that Texas way. I told him no. We had never been to this part of Alaska. He smiled like he did not believe me. That night, I barely slept. The wind moaned low around the building and the power light on the signal box pulsed like a heartbeat. I stayed awake checking timestamps, confirming data, trying to convince myself we were still in our first visit. Then I found it. A Polaroid photo, taped to the back of a control panel. It showed Mark and me, standing in the snow beside the same station, wearing exactly what we were wearing now. The colors were faded, the edges curled, like it had been there for years. I showed it to him, asked when we took it. He looked at me gently, like someone correcting a child. Then he said, "You do not remember, do you?" Brat too, and smiled again. "You died here. Last time. That's all." I ran. The walls seemed to bend with every breath. Mark called after me, but his voice sounded distant, slightly mechanical, like a recording that had been copied one too many times. I dragged him out of the building, swearing we would leave at first light. Outside, the cold hit us hard. The air felt wrong, heavy with static. Mark stared back at the dark silhouette of the station and whispered that we had stayed here longer than I thought. He said it like he was trying to remember a dream, like he believed it. We packed in silence. I wanted to go east toward the river trail, but Mark kept pointing north. He said the map was wrong. He said that last time we took the other route and it had been fine. Last time. When I checked my phone, the newest photo had a timestamp from 1979. I turned it off, terrified to see what the next picture might say. By noon, we found a smaller ridge cabin with a single antenna mast. Maybe an old relay point. We decided to stop there. I sat by the stove and began writing everything by hand. Paper. Ink. Something no signal could edit. Toby's harness was empty beside the cot. Mark had left it behind on purpose. He said we would not need the dog again. That night he seemed almost normal. He told jokes, made tea, talked about going home and repairing the old transmitter for fun. For the first time in days, I believed him. When I closed my eyes, his hand was warm in mine. Then morning came, and the bed was empty. The radio was not. It pulsed faintly. The light flickered. The Morse began. Stay, stop, stay, stop. I picked up the flashlight and ran through the fog. Every breath cut my throat. The antenna on the main tower was lit like a frozen star. The static hummed through the ground beneath my boots. Mark's voice came through the handheld receiver. Soft, trembling. "Ellie, do not leave. If you go, you will forget the last time. Hey, be self for white." I followed the sound back to the main station. The air inside was colder than the night. Frost glittered along the ceiling like veins of glass. Mark stood in the broadcast room. He was facing a wall covered in photographs. Dozens of them. All of us. Same faces. Same clothes. But slightly different. Different smiles. Different positions. Different light. He turned to me slowly, eyes wide. "Every time you leave," he said, You forget, but the station remembers. You always come back. But now itself. I stepped forward and grabbed his arm. His skin was cold, not from air, but from inside. He smiled. You came back to me. We do no war. I screamed, smashed the control board with the flashlight. Sparks burst. The radio hissed, but the signal did not die. It shifted. A new voice came through. Mine. Ellie, come back. You left yourself here. That was Seat. I dropped the light and ran. Snow blinded me. The antenna burned white against the clouds. Behind me, my own voice kept repeating my name, each syllable slower, softer, as if it was trying to catch up. They found me 3 days later near the Koyukuk River. I remembered nothing after leaving the station. The authorities logged my report, called it hypothermic disorientation. No one found Mark. A month later, the regional frequencies started picking up a repeating Morse loop. ELLIERA MSEYSTOPRETURNSTOP. Some sets played it as beeps, others as a voice file. Mine. I never learned how a signal could send itself. But sometimes, late at night, when I turn off every device, I can still feel it, waiting for me to answer. The last time I trusted a number, I lost 3 fingers to frostbite. Cold is not about what the thermometer says. It is about how still the air gets, how sound changes, how long you can stand in it before it starts to memorize your shape. My name is Aaron McConnell. I was 39, a field engineer with the Northern Atmospheric Group, tasked with replacing deep-layer ice sensors in outposts. No one remembered funding. My destination this time was White Spot 14, buried somewhere west of the Wrangell Peaks. The place had been shut down in 1999. Official reason: anomalous data loops. Every reading sent back one number, always -33 Fahrenheit. No drift, no variance, just a single fixed point in space. Locals from a nearby Inuit village had a saying: if you step into -33, do not stop. That cold will keep you as you are. If you spill. I thought it was metaphor, a warning against wind chill, something poetic. The hike-in took 2 days by sled and drone drop. The terrain was flat, ghost white, nothing but ridgeline and silence. When I reached the cabin, it looked like something out of time, a wooden box sunken into a bowl of snow, half buried, untouched. Inside, the equipment was shot, power system dead, sensors fried, but the old mercury thermometer on the wall still worked. Its red line hovered precisely at -33. The analog wristwatch nailed above the door had also stopped. Exactly 3:17 p.m. The moment I walked in, my own watch blinked once, then froze. I tapped it. No response. I activated the replacement unit and let it calibrate. Green lights, a faint buzz, then the screen blinked to life. Reading, -33, 0 degrees Fahrenheit. The number did not change. I waited. No update. I tried switching power cells. The display flickered, then showed a frozen data block with a timestamp from 1999. A name appeared in the header. S. Whitaker. I had never heard of him. I should have stepped back right then. Should have logged a hardware fault and gone back to base. But the sky was still. No wind. No storms. And the cold did not feel hostile. It felt prepared. That night, the wind picked up, then vanished. The snow fell in perfect vertical lines. I stayed in the cabin, sleeping in my thermal gear. Fire low. Dog curled at the door. I dreamed of clocks. When I woke to check the mirror above the sink, something was wrong. No breath. My skin prickled. My lips were numb. But the mirror stayed clear. No fog. No trace I was even there. I turned to check the survival monitor. It was blinking red. Warning, no biological activity detected. I pressed my palm to the scanner. Still red. I opened my journal, trying to write what I had seen. The pen shook. I forced the letters. Then I slept. Next morning, the page was blank. Only one sentence remained at the bottom. Recording first imprint. Until days and nigh. I went through my camera logs. Checked the timestamp captures from the last 3 days. Every photo had me in it. Same pose. Same angle. Standing next to the table. Holding the sensor case. Even the ones I had taken on opposite sides of the cabin. It was like I had stopped moving, and the world had kept taking the same picture. I laughed, just to prove I could. But the sound did not echo. It fell flat, like it had been swallowed. I turned toward the door. It was buried in snow, but it had only been 5 minutes since I stepped outside. At most. Now it looked like I had been here all night, and something had closed the world behind me. I told myself it was just drift. Wind-formed snow piling faster than usual. I cleared the door, grabbed the equipment, and left the cabin behind. I needed distance, not from the cold, but from the feeling that something inside had memorized me. At 300 meters, the air changed. The cold eased slightly, but my vision blurred. It felt like walking backward through a memory, like the snow underfoot was from years ago, and my legs did not know how to move through it. I turned around. The cabin was still there, but in the window, I saw myself, standing at the workstation, unmoving. I blinked. He did not. I kept walking. By evening, I had made it to a shoulder in the ridge and set camp. I checked the camera again. This time, the photos were empty. No duplicate. No shadow. Just snow. Just gear. Just me. I slept for an hour, maybe 2, and dreamed I was not me, but someone else. Someone named Whitaker. I woke up sweating under the thermal blanket, pulled out my watch to check the time, and froze. The name on the faceplate was no longer mine. It read, Property of S. Whitaker. I should have thrown it into the fire. Instead, I put it in my pocket and started back down, but my feet did not carry me toward safety. They carried me back to the cabin. When I stepped inside, everything was back to how it was on day 1. Thermometer, -33. Watch, 3:17 p.m. No footprints. No journal. Like nothing had happened. Like I was the first one here again. Except I was not alone. He stood at the far end of the room, facing the table, wearing my coat, holding my sensor kit. He did not move. Did not breathe. I walked closer. His eyes were open, white frosted, fixed in place. They were mine. I shouted. The cabin did not echo. I raised the sensor unit and smashed it against the wall. Sparks flew. The light dimmed. The floor trembled beneath me like ice settling under weight. The cabin is freezing itself shut. I feel it. The air is slowing. My heart is pounding, but not enough to keep me warm. My eyes begin to sting. I know what is happening. They are turning white. Like his. Like mine. I reach for my wrist. Tear the watch free. In one motion, I throw it into the center of the room. Then I run. Past the door. Through the snow. Out of the freeze line. And in that final moment, the moment the cold tries to pull me back, I feel time move again. They found me at the edge of the ridge. Unconscious. Hand frostbitten beyond repair. I told them my name. They said I kept repeating the wrong one for hours. I do not remember who I said. Now, I sketch the same thing every day. A clock. Hands locked at 3:17. And the number -33. Always -33. The last reading on the sensor unit said, New imprint confirmed. Whitaker. The road have been in a rising pras. Timestamp, November 4th, 2025. The day I went missing. I'm really glad you've stayed with me this far. Before we move on to the next story, don't forget to subscribe and turn on the bell so you won't miss any of our new videos every single day. Now then, let's continue. I had not been back to Fairbanks since the funeral. The snow was thicker than I remembered, and colder too. The kind that settles under your skin and stays there. Erin flew in the day after me. We had not spoken much in years, but she came when I asked. Helped me sort through the house. The boxes. The remains. We stayed in our old family cabin near the railway. It used to run freight across the Alaskan interior until it shut down in '85. But every winter, locals still talked about it, how the train never really stopped running. They said if you were near the tracks at 3:42 a.m. on the winter solstice, you might hear it again. Some said you could even see it. Erin rolled her eyes when I brought it up. She always thought ghost stories were for people who wanted to explain what they could not accept. But I remembered what the old neighbor, Mr. Culver, used to say. The train don't carry passengers. He told us once. It brings them back, but not the way they left. It is why, the first night, I set my alarm for 3:30 just to prove the silence. But when I stepped out, the wind had stilled, and something thin and metallic was humming in the dark. I walked toward the track, or what used to be the track. Snow buried everything but the impression of the rails. At 3:42, a long, low sound rose through the trees. Not a horn. Exactly. More like pressure releasing. Miles away, but moving closer. I raised my phone and took a photo of the dark band. When I looked at it later, I stopped breathing for a second. There was something faint. Not in the snow, but in the air above it. A window. And behind the window, a face. His face. My brother. Maybe it was a trick of light. Maybe the grief made me see what I wanted. But I could not stop thinking about that exact time. 3:42. I had written it in the corner of the photo without noticing. The next night, I went out again. This time, Erin came with me, half asleep and annoyed. You need to let it go, she said. But she still held the flashlight. We stood in silence by the track. The wind was gone again, like the world was holding its breath. Nothing came. But that night, on the recorder I had clipped to my jacket, a voice played back something we had not heard. A whisper. I'm cold. Don't leave me alone. Thank you half the round. Erin looked pale. She asked me not to go out again, but she did not deny what she heard. On the 20th, we both stayed up, unable to sleep. Just after 3, we bundled up and walked to the track together. It was darker than usual, and even the moonlight looked frozen. Erin said nothing. I felt like I was walking towards something I had already agreed to long ago. 3:42. The air shifted. A light, dim and blue, brushed across the snow. The rails, buried all winter, cracked loud enough to make us jump. Then, it appeared. The train, old, iced over, silent, sliding slowly out from the trees without a sound. In the second car, behind a frost-covered window, I saw her, myself, sitting stiff, head tilted, eyes pale and blank, staring right at me. And I swear, she blinked. Erin pulled me back from the edge. I do not even remember leaning forward, but she said my foot was nearly on the rail. The train kept sliding past us, soundless, each window fogged with ice. But I saw things moving inside, his shapes and seats, some looking out, some not. One of them was my brother, or at least, it looked like him. He stood by one of the doors, just behind the glass. His face had not changed, not the way people do in memory. He was smiling, slow, familiar. He raised his hand and tapped the glass. Just once. I do not think it made a sound. Erin gripped my coat and shouted something, but it felt far away. Her voice like a muffled recording. I do not know what made me snap out of it. Maybe the cold finally reached the bones. Maybe her voice broke through whatever dream I was sliding into. I turned away and ran. My breath burned in my chest. My legs felt like they were pulling through syrup, like the snow had thickened just for me. Back at the cabin, we locked the doors, shut the curtains, and did not talk until morning. I told myself none of it had been real. Just cold and grief and sleep deprivation twisting what I wanted most. But the next day, I walked back out to check. The snow covered everything, almost, except the stretch near the tracks. That patch had not gathered a flake. It was as if something heavy had slid through it. Like a plow, clean and untouched. And there were footprints. Just one set. From where I had stood, but they only went in one direction. Toward the train. I told Erin it must have been old tracks. Or maybe someone else had come through. She did not argue. She just looked at me differently. Like she was trying to decide what part of me had come back with her. Winter passed. But something stayed cold in me. And I could tell she felt it too. Every time the wind came through the windows, or when the house creaked just after midnight, Erin would look at the clock. 1 year later, on the next solstice, I woke to her bed empty. I knew before I even opened the front door. The tracks were uncovered again. I followed the same path I had taken the year before. Snow crunching under my boots like a countdown. At 3:42, I heard the sound again, deeper this time, like it came from under the earth. The train was already there, sliding into view like it had never left. And there she was, Erin, walking slowly toward the last car. I screamed her name. She looked back once, smiled, nodded, stepped inside. The door shut behind her, and the train moved on, disappearing into trees that should not have been close enough to hide it. I stood there long after the cold stopped stinging. In the glass of the last car, before it vanished, I saw our reflections, Erin and me, sitting side by side. But I was still standing there, alone. They say grief makes you hear things. I believe that. But now, every solstice, exactly at 3:42, I bury my head under blankets. Not because I believe in the train, because I hear it, getting closer. The morning we descended into the Ialik ice cave. The air had a certain weight to it. Not the weight of a storm or a warning exactly, but something more like a presence. I had led winter survival tours across Alaska for nearly a decade, and I knew when a place wanted to be left alone. Still, this cave was new on the map, and the weather was calm, so I ignored the pull in my chest. There were 4 of us. Me, my partner Alex, and 2 travelers named Kim and Daryl, both from California, eager for photos and adrenaline. They were the kind of people who called every snowfall magical and still thought a husky would wag its tail like a golden retriever. We packed light, carried emergency gear, and started the descent just after sunrise. The cave had been marked with the Inuit name Immasarnartuk. The translation varied depending on who you asked. But the version I heard most often was this: the place where one should not breathe deeply. One elder in the last village warned us specifically, looking me dead in the eye. Do not yawn in the cave. He said, if your breath matches its breath, it will remember that it is hungry. It's well, I laughed politely. You know how it is. These things sound like folklore until they do not. The first 100 meters were stunning. Pillars of translucent blue ice rose like frozen lungs around us. Daryl kept gasping and spinning with his camera. Kim stayed close to the wall, muttering about the cold but smiling through it. About 200 meters in, I noticed something strange. The air had rhythm. There was no breeze. But every few seconds I felt a pulse of cool air against my face. A steady inhale. A pause. Then a long, slow exhale, like the cave itself was sleeping. I paused, motioned for everyone to stay quiet, and listened. My own breathing was loud in my ears. But underneath it, there was something else. A deep thrum, distant but timed. That was when Kim yawned, loud and sudden, the kind of yawn that spreads like a virus in a room. Alex yawned right after. Then Daryl. I clenched my jaw, refusing to pull. But I swear, the air around us thickened, like the cave had just drawn a deeper breath. I called it a coincidence. I had to, even when I heard something that sounded like an echo, but not an echo of our voices. It was the yawn, returned to us deeper, longer, ragged at the edges. We kept moving, but my legs felt heavier. Just before the 300-meter mark, Kim stumbled. I turned and saw her foot caught on something, a shape under the ice. I bent down with my flashlight. It was a body, frozen solid, face half embedded in the ice, mouth wide open. The jaw had cracked from the cold, lips drawn back in what looked like a permanent yawn. The eyes were rolled upward, white with frost. Kim screamed. Daryl backed away, mumbling. I stepped between them and tried to keep calm. Told them it was probably an old accident. But the look on their faces told me what I already feared. We all felt the same thing. The body had not just died there. It had been held there. The next 20 minutes felt like hours. The air temperature dropped at least 10 degrees. Our headlamps dimmed despite full batteries. I checked my watch and saw that time had barely moved. Then the floor cracked. Not collapsed. Cracked, like something was shifting underneath. A deep groan followed, long and tired, almost mournful. I looked around. No one had moved. But that sound, it was as if the cave had stretched in its sleep. We started retreating. The opening was behind us. Not far, but the path had changed. Where there had been packed snow, now there were mounds. The entrance looked smaller, almost sealed. I tried to steady the group, called for a head count. That was when Daryl yawned again. And the cave, or whatever lived inside it, exhaled. Not air, not wind, but presence. My helmet shifted. Ice particles scattered from above. Somewhere, something scraped against the wall like teeth on stone. I did not wait to see what followed. I shouted for the others to move. The cave might have been sleeping before, but now, it was waking, and it was breathing in time with us. We took the tunnel to the left, the one that veered away from the main artery of the cave. I remembered mapping it the day before, noting it ended in a small hollow. At the time, it seemed like a good fallback point in case of emergency. Now, it felt more like a place to hide. The deeper we moved, the more I realized the sound of breathing was following us. It was not in the wind anymore. There was no wind, just an ambient pull of air in and out, slow and deliberate, like the lungs of something vast, buried in the glacier, were sinking with us. Kim gripped my sleeve and whispered, "Is it breathing us?" 8. I did not answer. I counted our steps like I used to count seconds when lost in whiteout. It gave me something to do besides listen to Alex's shallow gasps or the shuffling echo of Daryl's boots. None of us spoke unless absolutely necessary. The cave no longer echoed the way it should. Every sound seemed dampened, swallowed. The hollow was smaller than I remembered. Low ceiling, round walls, slick with frost. It offered no safety, only a pause. Our lamps dimmed again. Alex sank down, exhausted, and Kim slumped next to him. Daryl stood facing the tunnel entrance, eyes wide, jaw tight. For a moment, it felt like the breath had stopped. Then I yawned. I did not mean to. It slipped out, long and slow, dragged from my lungs by the cold and fear. No one else did. But behind us, something did. The breath echoed back, not mimicking, matching. That was when I knew for sure. It was not copying us. We were the ones falling into its rhythm. We stayed still, listening. Minutes passed. I tried to focus on the GPS, but the signal had frozen. The numbers blinked nonsense. Kim mumbled something I almost missed. Maybe it can't fully wake up. Not unless someone breathes like it. Not unless it's been mirrored. This is In That Opsubs by Lives. Daryl turned sharply. What happens when it finishes the yawn? Is. None of us answered. Then came the crack. Louder this time. Not the pop of ice under pressure, but a shift. Deep below, like bones, rolling beneath skin. A low vibration ran through the walls. Fine powder fell from the ceiling. A fissure opened across the far wall. And from it, something moved. At first, I thought it was just ice breaking free, but then it pulled forward. Slow, segment by segment. No limbs, no face, just folds of pale flesh embedded with frost and teeth. And a mouth, a cavernous, wet yawn of a mouth, wider than a doorframe. No eyes, just that void pulling air in and letting it out again. We ran. Alex grabbed Kim. I pulled Daryl. The tunnel behind us howled, like the cave exhaling for the first time in decades. Daryl stumbled, cried out. I turned and saw his body lifted slightly off the ground, pulled backward by sheer suction. Not air, not wind, a hunger in breath form. I lunged, grabbed his arm, but his fingers slipped from mine. The last I saw of him, his mouth was wide open, his back arching unnaturally, like he was mid-yawn. I activated the flare on my belt and slammed it to the ice floor behind us. The explosion cracked the chamber, sent a tremor through the tunnels. Chunks of ice fell. The cave roared, not in pain, in reflex, as if startled. We did not stop running. I felt heat from the flare behind us, followed by cold rushing in to fill the vacuum. When we reached daylight, the breath finally stopped. Not the wind. The breath. The air around us no longer pulsed, no longer watched, no longer waited. Alex lost hearing in his left ear. Kim would not fly home for weeks. She sat in silence most days, hands trembling any time a draft passed by. As for me, I stopped yawning. I learned to suppress it, taught myself to breathe in short, shallow bursts when cold. Because even now, some nights, especially when it drops below -20, I can still feel that rhythm in the air. Still hear that long inhale, the pause, and the release. Like something beneath the ice is still sleeping, still waiting for someone to match its breath. Thank you for staying with me until the very end. I truly mean that. If you enjoyed these stories, leave a like and subscribe if you haven't already. That way, you won't miss the next ones. And once again, thank you for walking this dark road with me tonight.